my favorite question from buyers, if you weren't retiring, if you were going to own this another 5 to 10 years and you had unlimited money, what would you do? You got to look at what your initial investment was and what your exit value is. So many people make the wrong conclusion of judging their success just on the exit value. So 3 things enhance the value of a business. The first one is you want to work on the business, not in the business.
Welcome to the Entrepreneur's Logbook podcast. I'm your host, Zach Bernard. You can find me on social at It's Zach B. In each episodes, I bring on experts from various industries who will learn about their strategies and insights driving extreme business growth. The Entrepreneur's Logbook podcast is sponsored by Weave PR, where we're dedicated to helping entrepreneurs build their thought leadership and business by getting them on podcasts and launching their own podcasts. Today, we're joined by Gregory Kovsky, President and CEO of International Business Associates, also known as IBA, the Pacific Northwest's oldest and largest business brokerage firm, helping business owners navigate the complex process of selling their companies and maximizing the value of what they build. Gregory has personally facilitated over 300 business transactions across industries that range from manufacturing, technology, to marine and automotive, with deals spanning multiple states and typically between $1 to $30 million in enterprise value. He purchased IBA back in 2000 and has grown it into a regional powerhouse with 10 offices across Washington and Oregon, and the firm has now completed over 4,400 transactions across its 50-year history. Gregory, it's great to have you on the show. Welcome aboard.
Thank you, Zach. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
I love it. Well, I was really looking forward to this conversation. I know we were speaking off the mic before we started recording, but we've had a lot of business owners that are maybe in marketing, e-commerce or anything like that. But the one thing that we've never talked about or touched on, which I feel is a pretty important component in business, is selling a business. A lot of entrepreneurs, what you're doing is you're building a company, you're building this asset, but you're thinking of the thought process that, okay, maybe in 10, 20 years, I'm going to sell this asset. And there's so many things that a lot of people don't know about this process that I know you've had the experience of going through hundreds of times. So I'm really excited to touch on all those components here. But as it's an entrepreneurship business type podcast, what I always love to cover with any guest that we have on the show is if you had to rebuild your company from scratch, knowing everything that you know today, what's kind of the one thing that you would do differently that you feel a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners get totally wrong?
One thing that I think entrepreneurs underestimate is the importance of screening and hiring quality people. To scale my business, I need talented business sale intermediaries who can problem solve, articulate, educate, persuade. And early on, I didn't think this was as difficult as it is. It came a little naturally to me. I'm a salesman by personality and birth. I went to the University of Texas, McCombs School of Business, studied investment finance and accounting. So there were elements that I had when I joined IBA in 94 that I probably took for granted in my own skill set. And some of my early hirings as I began to grow the firm disappointed me. And over the years, I've been able to develop metrics and characteristics that I want in the hiring of new people and have had a much higher success rate in terms of performance with what I would call my 2.0 team. I bought the company in 2000 from the founder and did great with heritage brokers, adding some of my own up until 2008, had about 15 brokers in the field doing deals. Then the Great Recession happened And
Mm,
by 2012, we were down to 6 brokers.
wow.
And I've scaled back up to approximately 20 at this point. But it was a little bit of a blessing, the recession. Some retired, some moved on to other professions, some I let go, that I got to hire ramping up from 2012 to the present with my knowledge and experience over my first decade of owning the company. And so if you
Yeah.
went back in the time machine, I wish I had known really what it takes to be successful in this profession like I
Yeah.
do today when I onboarded new people.
Yeah, and I feel like when you start a company, you will go through that either way. You will have to learn to better hire people, create better processes. It's like a live, learn, fail type experience and improve as you go. So interesting. And you're not the first person that mentions that. It seems to be like a commonality. You want to make sure that you get good people on your side, you hire the right people, and then you get a good process in place to make sure the next hire is the 2.0 team that you mentioned is the correct people on board, and you can obviously deliver great results for your partners and clients here. And just taking a step to the selling, buying side of things, for a lot of entrepreneurs, they've literally spent years, sometimes even like decades, building their business to, they eventually just have like this idea that like, okay, I'll sell off the company, or maybe I'll do something else. But typically selling the company is usually the main thing that they have in mind. And it feels like a bit overwhelming. Like you have to think like, hey, we need to have all these processes. Can I actually get the evaluation that I need? I need this. Like there's so many misconceptions as well. But I'd really love to hear if you could walk us through that process of what it looks like for a business owner when they come to you. Like, what does IBA do, and how do you guide someone that comes from like that initial conversation all the way to actually like closing a deal?
Certainly. I think you made a good observation, and I it starts with having the right perspective on the sale.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at the sale of a business as an investment, and it's truly an investment, you put time, money, and resources in over a period of time, you got to look at what your initial investment was,
Mm-hmm.
what the annuity you earned in terms of profits over the 10-year that you owned it, and what your exit value is. So many people make the wrong conclusion of judging their success just on the exit value. If a business, and we'll use round numbers, costs someone $500,000 to launch effectively, they, for the last 5 years, have been earning $1 million a year running their enterprise. And they ultimately sell, we'll say, for 5 million, 5 times EBITDA of the million.
Mm-hmm.
Well, just over the last 5 years, it has generated them $10 million between the last 5 year annuity of 1 million and the $5 million exit. So you shouldn't be looking in the mirror and simply looking at that exit value.
Mm-hmm.
You should be looking at a more long-term perspective on how did this investment do for me? Did it put my kids through college? Did it allow me to buy a nicer home, go on vacations, etc.? Because
Yeah.
that truly was the vehicle. But with
Mm-hmm.
our process, and interrupt me and ask questions, um, but it starts with a valuation of the business. What is the market value of the company today? And
Mm-hmm.
that needs to be looked at in terms of your future goals. 70% of our clients are retirement sales.
Yeah.
So you take that money, you share that amount with your wealth advisor, and is it enough to retire in comfort? do what you want for legacy, maybe donate to the charities you want. If the answers are no to that question, it's probably not time to sell,
Mm-hmm.
because the value of a business is what the market will pay. You
Yeah.
hear frequently in residential real estate, people fall in love with their home. They
Yeah.
have memories of time with their kids in the sandbox. They have, watching sporting events in the den. The kitchen in their mind is filled with wonderful smells and family events that filled it. But someone else looking at it says, I don't want to maintain that sandbox. The the audio visual in this house is so 2008. I'm going to have to
Mm-hmm.
redo everything. This kitchen isn't doesn't have
Gonna
the
renovate the entire thing.
cabinets I see. So it's what the market value is. And the true definition of value is what a willing buyer and seller agree. And we
Mm-hmm.
can give educated guesses based on doing as many transactions as we've done. But I'm the first to say I've seen businesses sell for more than I thought based on market dynamics. And then businesses sell at what I would deem a value proposition, because I couldn't find a person who wanted to locate to that location to run that company. I know both of us live on marine environments. There are some wonderful businesses on the Washington, Oregon coast.
Mm-hmm.
But for example, we sold a veterinary hospital in Forks, Washington, which is about as far west as you can go in the continental United States. It actually was famous. It was involved in the Twilight series, if you are familiar with that book and movie series, vampires and werewolves.
Mm-hmm.
But finding a veterinarian who wanted to run that community hospital was problematic. Took a little while, but eventually we found someone who wanted to hunt and fish. And they loved if they had no appointments on a Wednesday, that they could hang up a gone fishing sign at 3 o'clock and get their line in the water and maybe catch a steelhead or a salmon in the local area. So those are the type of dynamics that will impact price, but that's where we start. And I'm happy
Yeah.
to continue with the process, but I'll pause and let you
Yeah.
maybe ask a question or comment.
Yeah, because I know a lot of people, when you think about selling your company, the first thing you're thinking about is probably like, okay, how can I maximize the amount of money I get for it? Do I have the correct systems in place? Am I going to get a good valuation? But one of the things I feel like a lot of people forget is like, yeah, someone needs to be interested in buying this. Like there needs to be a buy for this. Automatically, you're just thinking like, okay, maybe I could sell it for this, that, but you're not thinking there needs to be someone that will pay for that price. And again, as you mentioned, you need to find a willing buyer that will purchase it and will see certain market price for what you're offering. And you might have a number in your head, but when they give you maybe their offer, it's like totally off. And then you're like, why is that? And there's like a few things maybe that you didn't have like in mind. But I love the fact that you mentioned that it's like a vehicle. Like it's not just about the selling price. It's also about like the entire history of the company. Maybe like the 10 years you've been running it. You've been making money out of it. It's been like helping your lifestyle, maybe entertain a certain lifestyle. And then once you get towards the end, it's like that little like bonus in the end. At like the end of the year, same thing with your company when you're exiting it. And I feel like a lot of people totally forget that. And there's so many stories. I mean, I'm sure you probably have hundreds of stories around like exits that completely failed, founders that poured so much money into like the company, gave up so much equity, and then they arrive to sell their company, and then they basically break even, or they maybe lose money. And for a lot of people, that's obviously something that you want to avoid. And one of the things I'd love to understand is you've been in over like 300 transaction personally, as I recall here. But I'd love to hear if there's any common mistakes that you see a lot of business owners make that either kill a deal entirely or perhaps it leaves a lot of money on the table. And if there's any way where they can address those like a little bit earlier before these mistakes even start. Because I think that that's a big pitfall for a lot of business owners that are looking to exit or sell their company.
So, three things enhance the value of a business that you can think ahead of. The first one is you want to work on the business, not in the business. We started the
Mm-hmm.
conversation about hiring the right people. Businesses sell at higher multiples and value if you can go on vacation, if you have a good staff infrastructure in place. A restaurant where the owner is the head chef sells at a lower value than one where they just greet people who come to the establishment each
Yeah.
evening. So that's the first thing. The second thing that enhances value is clarity of financial records and consistency, because one of the decision makers in a sale is frequently a bank or investors. So you can have a buyer who's very excited about the opportunity, but if they can't bring the bag of gold to complete the deal, it doesn't matter what the buyer and seller agree. They
Mm-hmm.
need to be able to get that money in place. And most commonly, it's not just coming out of their checking account, they have a
No.
bank or investors involved. So
Yeah.
that's the second thing. And the third thing is, what is the future potential of the business? Because there's
Mm-hmm.
two things that drive value. So it's historical numbers, which are predictive of the future, but not guaranteeing the future. But what drives motivation and gets people to engage is appreciation value for the company. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I'm a fan of Elon Musk. I like Tesla and what he's done as an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
People right now are not as excited about his electrical vehicles as they were during a previous time. I still think it's a phenomenal product, but it's not as hot in the market as a product right now. So you would think maybe I'm not going to invest in Tesla stock anymore. But I actually am quite excited about it, and we'll see where it goes, because he is transitioning to robotics. He has transitioned two of his plants from building cars to robotics. He comes from a mining family background, and I've heard him on podcasts talk about building a workforce to mine. And if you can think, no one is raising their hand and saying, I want to go into the mines as a career path right now. But
No.
with robots, you don't have to worry about oxygen, work conditions. You can access mineral deposits that you maybe couldn't access with humans. You can maybe scale it to mine on the moon or Mars if you have aspirations. So, is Tesla a vehicle company, or is it a robotics company moving forward? We won't know, but where the stock is in 5 to 10 years, my bet is it's greater than it is today, and the
Oh yeah.
business model is going to continue to evolve. And that's
Mm-hmm.
the same thing with a privately held company or family business. If you, using something that everyone knows, the restaurant again, if you have developed the recipes, systems, and processes in one location, and you have a line of people out the door, reservations, well, then it's logical. Why not expand to a second, third, fifth
Hmm.
location?
Yeah.
Well, that's a different model. Different management skills are required, but my experience is a 10 location restaurant chain is going to sell for significantly more than a one location iconic restaurant.
Yeah.
So those are types of things that come into maximizing your value.
Yeah.
And think about not just where the business is today. My favorite question from buyers who are looking at businesses, especially from our retirement level customers,
Hmm.
if you weren't retiring, if you were going to own this another 5 to 10 years and you had unlimited money, what would you do?
Mm, interesting. So it sounds like when you look at a business, you want to think like the potential of like innovation and like one standpoint, like, okay, what could they do differently that's going to help grow the business forward for like that new business owner that might acquire the business, for example. You need to think in their shoes, like, okay, what could I come into the business, do differently to grow it faster, do it better, to grow the company? No one wants to buy a company and have it crash into the ground. Obviously, that's not like the end goal here. But I love the fact that you mentioned like the restaurant example. If you have like one mom pop like family restaurant, it's like famous in that one city or location, that's great. You're maybe gonna get a decent valuation. But if you have one that has repeatable system, repeatable processes that you're able to expand and basically clone it to multiple location, even if you only have like three, you've built this system, this like asset that you're able to replicate, which has so much more growth potential in the right hand of like the right buyer here. And I think that's something that a lot of business owners need to think about. It's like, okay, if I want to exit the company, what can I do to make this asset more appealing to like anyone that I'm selling it to basically raise like that valuation?
Correct. And the opportunities are endless to look at younger, fresh eyes. We frequently will sell businesses to people who bring their own skill set and knowledge to take it to a higher level. One that we're seeing right now, kind of akin to Tesla, is
Hmm.
body shops,
Okay.
fender benders, car accidents, etc. Well, they knew how to repair a Ford, a Jeep, a Mercedes. Now you need to, with all the sensors and electronics, to really combine computer knowledge with body shop repair knowledge.
Hmm.
And the body shops that can do that are scarce right now. But if someone can dial in that model and be the body shop for EVs, they
Mm.
now become very valued in the community because I can tell you a lot of body shops will pass on that work right now, which means
Yeah,
scarcity drives value, meaning insurance companies are paying a premium to make those repairs.
there you go. Are you going to be opening a body shop, Gregory? You
No,
have like these amazing ideas. I mean, maybe that's your new project here. Should be
well,
opening one of
we
those.
have a very robust transportation
Yeah.
division at IBA, and so that's where the beauty of what we do is people lift up the hood and teach us about their businesses, and it's so wonderful to think about these business models and what can be done with them, and that's
Hmm.
truly one of the things we sell is the potential.
Yeah.
What can someone do with this business? And on the buyer side, people get paralysis by analysis, looking backwards. And like people will come to us and say, what was the financial performance in 2019 before the pandemic?
Hmm.
And I will say, we're happy to share those numbers. it was an entirely different economic environment than we have in 2026. You should be more focused not on what it did in 2019, but what it can do in 2030. What is the potential with this platform? Because my
Hmm.
belief in my lifetime, we will never see the environment of 2019 again, where the economy was overheating, interest rates were relatively low. There were pieces there. It
Hmm.
was a global economy where now it seems to be transitioning more to domestic manufacturing economy, at least in the United States with tariffs, etc. So, things change.
Oh
And
yeah.
if you're not adjusting in real time and being aware of what's going on, you're gonna fail as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, you're gonna be left behind, and that kind of brings me to like some last like 2-3 pointers I wanted to like touch on before we wrap things up. So, any entrepreneurs, they're running a business company, they're like, I'm gonna run this a couple more years, like definitely, like I want to build like some more traction, but like, hey, I have an end goal. I want to sell the company at some point in time. Like I want to exit the company. Is there like 2-3 bullet points or piece of advice that you would have for these business owners at this point in time? Things that they should be looking to do, looking to prove upon to help increase their valuation when they actually get there. But not only increase the valuation, but also making sure that they can get one in the first place and there is a buyer interested in what they've built.
So, returning to some prior themes, first have crystal clear financials that a buyer, their CPA, CFO, a bank, investors can look at.
Mm-hmm.
That's, good systems and processes, employee manuals, business plans, those sort of things, SOPs that a buyer, again, can replicate and use to learn the business.
Mm-hmm.
And I would also say, just like selling a car, detail out the business. So if your website is a brochure with no video and no current information, realize everyone's going to go there. You only have one chance to make a first impression.
Mm-hmm.
So get your house in order. If you're a manufacturer and you have a boneyard of miscellaneous unfinished products, excess materials, get those to the dump and out of there so that someone is not walking your shop floor and saying, "What's this 200
Mm-hmm.
square feet that seems to be the junk pile?" Why would you want to have that? Now, you may organize the junk pile and show value of what's there, but it can't just be a pile that people are dumping stuff on.
I love that. And yeah, I mean, I see this like so many times. Like you see like a lot of companies, you look at their website and you're like, well, what's going on there? Like there should be some adjustments. And I think that can be like a turn off. And I love what you mentioned around like the first impression because they definitely do matter. I'm like a big on that. I mean, I know I run my own podcast, I can run podcasts too, but that's like one of the main things I tell everyone is like, hey, your first impression is going to matter a lot. And it's going to be the exact same things when it comes to selling your business. If a potential buyer looks at your business, they have that bad first impression, probably not going to put too much intention in considering and looking at all the details to see what's actually under the hood. So what's out there matters a lot. I love that. So thank you so much for joining us, Gregory. And as far as like reaching out to you, if anyone later down the road, they want to sell their company or they're like, hey, I want to sell their company now, or they just want your advice, input. You've obviously been in this space for quite a while. Is there any places they should be looking at? I know you're decently active on LinkedIn. You have your website, but anywhere they should be finding you on?
Yeah, so I would start with our website, which is ibainc.com. So ice cream boy apple, ice cream Nancy Charlie.com.
Yeah.
And two elements I would point out there is A, we have a blog which publishes twice a week, which has had approximately 200 guest authors. So, from attorneys to CPAs to bankers to business sale intermediaries, a lot of information there that you can learn about buying and selling a business.
Mm-hmm.
Also, we have a video page where we share podcast appearances like this, in addition to having our own corporate videos sharing information on what we do. So that's our a wonderful place to start. You can always reach out to me at our corporate headquarters at 425-454-3052. I love being a resource. I speak at seminars. I go to universities and share information with people thinking they want to enter entrepreneurship through acquisition, which is an emerging educational field at universities.
Mm-hmm.
So the best decisions are made from a foundation of knowledge, and that's why I created our blog. I wanted to give more knowledge out there in an industry that doesn't have a great knowledge out in the public domain.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons I had you on the podcast. Like I told you, we haven't had anyone like selling exit businesses, etc. So there's definitely some missing information out there. So thank you so much for taking the time here to join us here. And for anyone that wants to get in touch with you, head over to ibainc.com if you want to learn more. There's also the blog. We'll put your link into if anyone wants to reach out there. And then to your listeners, if you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, like it, review it. You can also find more insights at wefuture.com, where we're dedicated to helping entrepreneurs build their thought leadership in business by getting them on podcasts and launching their own podcasts. Until then, keep pushing, and we'll see you in the next one.